Okay, so in today's session, day 2, we can, as we discussed initially, so first session we just discuss about the foundation basically, what soft skill we required and how we can set our daily routine and the goals basically, how we can focus on the improving the English communication and other leadership skill, which definitely required. Initially, we required communication skill, and going forward, we require definitely leadership skill. How we can manage the multiple cross teams and other stuffs. Okay, how we can understand the corporate culture, ethics, etiquettes, and other. How we can improve the professionalism in the over any media like LinkedIn or something. Okay, and how we can get the referrals if you want to join somewhere. So now in today's session, we will start and the cover about the roadmap like this. We will try to understand the DevOps tools, right? They know which basically which DevOps tools we need to cover because there are lots of tools available in the market. So I come across like from the some users like they are literally confusing ki which tools they need to prefer for the study or to set to get the jobs as soon as possible, right? Then is really certification having certification is required. Okay, there is a pros and cons we will definitely discuss, and in which situation we can do the certification that we will definitely discuss, and in between if you have any questions on that we will definitely take. Okay, then how the programming skill will help in the DevOps when we work on that, right? Then tools and technology we already cover here, we will see that which major topics we need to cover in the tools. Then how much Linux scope, okay, or how much Linux we need to learn, or is that Linux mandatory to have the skills in the DevOps career, right? Then some advanced topics like how the CI/CD works, why we need CI/CD pipeline, and what is the DevOps culture for that. Okay, we will try to understand that the normal traditional way and the CI/CD structure, and then some part of the VM and container. Okay, which one we need to prefer. Then the major issues or the pros and cons basically of the manual and infrastructure as a code infra management. Okay, how we what things now the organization are using now, right? Then some part of this monitoring and observability. That is the agenda for today. So anyone, any questions on this, or anyone want to add in between? Link I already share on the group. If you want to explore later, definitely you can just do. Okay. Okay. So as I said, there are lots of tools available in the market. So definitely most of the freshers or non-IT backgrounds who want to shift to this or switch career into the DevOps, right? Or maybe some might you have like developer, tester, you want to switch to the DevOps, right? So which tools you need to focus on that, and in the particular tool, which tools you need to, which tools and core services you need to focus on. Okay. So majorly, I just mentioned here some of the major skills like which one you required. But if I go to here, dashboards, whiteboard, so I can just write down something here. Definitely in between this, these are the tools basically which we need to focus. So first, basic understanding like where the company hosted their environment, right? That is the first we need to understand, because without that we cannot work anywhere. It might be on premises, right? It might be on any cloud. When we say about the cloud, it can be like it may be AWS, Azure, right? Or GCP, or more than that, like Oracle Cloud, IBM Cloud, Alibaba Cloud, like that. There are number of cloud providers available, but these are the market leaders, right? And you definitely you know about it. These are the market leaders, and out of this, AWS will definitely top leader of this competition, right? So that is the reason we just prefer to learn in this session basically AWS. If you have expertise in the Azure or GCP, you can definitely learn multi-cloud. It's totally up to you, right? So we need to understand where the company hosted their environment. It's depend on the application nature, their working module, and the architecture decision. Because most of the things, if you can think about the BFSI, banking finance domain, they will prefer to host their servers on the on-prem, right? for the security reason, other stuffs. Might be some API service might be on the AWS, okay, but their core services which they don't want to expose over the public internet, public cloud provider, right? Because these are the public cloud providers where you can access service from anywhere, right? Or sometimes company or any project might follow the hybrid model. Some service might be available on the on-prem and some service might be available on the any cloud service like AWS, GCP or your Azure, right? So for this first and skill we need to learn, let's say AWS cloud, for example. Okay. This is the mandatory skill which you have. Just don't think about AWS, but you can learn any of one of them, AWS, Azure or GCP. It's totally up to you. But this service skill we should have as a mandatory part. Then next, right? Let's say we assume we need AWS, right? So now how we will create resources inside the AWS, right? How we will create manually, not possible. Technically possible, but when you are working a very small scale industry, in that case might be you can create the resources, whatever the resources available in the AWS, like your EC2, your load balancer, your Route 53, S3 bucket, low elastic beanstalk or CloudWatch, वगैरह, lots of things. Okay, you can create for small scale industry where 1 to 10 servers or less than that. But when you work, when we want to work with the enterprise organization where server is in numbers in thousand or more than that, or maybe 100 plus, right? 100 plus services or more than that microservices, then definitely manual things is not possible, right? It will take too much time to create the resources. Again, it's a, let's say you are creating the resources, all the stuffs for dev environment. What about the test and production environment, right? It will definitely take too much time consuming process and lots of workload and the frustration you will get, right? So to avoid these kind of things, you can learn infrastructure as a code, which is IAC, right? Because manual work is very hectic here when you are going with the mid scale or enterprise organization. No one allowed you to create any resources manually. Okay. So for that, you can learn infrastructure as a code. This also comes mandatory skill. You must have these skills. So which tools we need to learn? You can take Terraform. This is a market leader, right? Apart from this, CDK also available. CFT, which we called it as a cloud formation template, right? If you are aware about the AWS services. So these are the secondary skills you can learn later as well. But Terraform you should learn first, right? Now, apart from this, so we should learn AWS. Then how we can manage the services. We can learn ISC, which is, let's say, Terraform. Okay. Now, what about the base OS machine, right? So definitely we are using infrastructure as a code to create the resources. We are learning as a hosting provider, which is AWS, right? To create your services. You guys are not able to see my screen?
Yeah, is it it's visible?
Might be
Yeah, it's
Sonali
looking fine.
side's network issue.
Hello, sir. Can I rejoin?
Yeah, definitely. You can rejoin.
Okay.
Okay. Where it gone? Okay. AWS is must to have. Terraform is must to have, right? To manage the infrastructure. Now, what about the baseline OS? We know like we need to learn Docker, we need to install the any web server, like let's say EC2 base. But that's most of the cases it's totally about the Linux, right? Docker also, when we think about the Docker, it's use shared kernel, which also Linux based, right? When you deal any of the DevOps tools, which might be CI/CD or your Ansible, right, or any other stuffs. In between to help more into this, we need to definitely have a Linux based skill here because .NET based application you will get very rare in rare case. For that you can use IIS web server or Windows based applications, right? But that's very little less percent, like 10 to 20% something or more, less than that. But if you think most of the times you will definitely get Linux based operating system, right? It might be Node.js, Ubuntu, Nginx, वगैरह like that. So for that, you need to understand and learn Linux. So that skill will definitely help out you in the more when you are working as a or when you want to work as a DevOps engineer. So these comes under the mandatory skills. So now next, okay, we have hosting provider, then infrastructure management, then your baseline OS. Now, how you will maintain your application code, right? Manually not possible, like keeping all the infrastructure code or your application code on your local machine, right? Then copy paste that's into the EC2 machine or any Docker container or any Kubernetes container, right? Manually, it's totally waste of the efforts, and no one allows you to do this manually deployment in the industry. Okay, so for that we need to learn application code management, which is your we normally call it as Git, right? For the application code, source code management basically. If I correct the statement here, source code management, where we need to keep our application code. It can be application code or it might be your infrastructure. Okay, Git for that. And now, how you want to deploy this application code or infrastructure code on this target, right? Destination. So for that, you required CI/CD pipeline. When we think about the CI/CD pipeline, there are multiple tools available in the market, like Jenkins, your GitLab, CI/CD, right? Then your GitHub Action, you might definitely heard about this GitHub Action, right? Apart from this, there are number of tools, GoCD, Argo CD, right? I think Flux CD also there and Harness. So there are lots of tools available in the market. So people sometimes might confuse कि इतने सारे tools है तो how which tools we need to focus on, right? So based on your experience, can anyone try to explain which tools you need to focus on? Anyone?
So, sir, as I have 1 year of experience, I am focusing on Jenkins and GitHub Actions, as well as I am trying to get a hands-on experience on AWS CI/CD services.
Namdev, we are not able to hear you if you're talking. Yeah.
Sorry, guys. Okay. So someone said Jenkins and GitHub, right?
Yeah, GitHub Actions I tried for automate deployment by writing a YML file.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I am trying to get hands-on experience on CI/CD services of AWS.
Okay. Yeah, definitely you can just based on your whatever because there are when we work with the multiple projects, so company to company, the tools might be vary. Okay, it's depend on their architectural decision and the company's policy, which tools they need to follow. Sometimes some company don't want to go with the third party tools, as we seen GitLab, GitHub Action, and Jenkins or any other tools, Go CD harness like that. They want to use within a AWS environment itself, like code commit, code deploy like that, right? And some company might choose to use Jenkins, right? Some might choose to use GitLab, CI/CD, GitHub Actions like that. So these are the major one we can definitely focus on, like your Argo CD, then GitHub Action, GitLab's CI/CD, where we need to write down the YAML file, right? YML file. So based on that YAML file, it will automatically create the stages inside the tools, like in the pipeline basically. Whatever the stage and other SonarQube integration like that, whatever the things you need to configure in that pipeline. Yeah, someone want to say something?
Sir, what about the Argo City, sir? Mainly Argo City is used while deploying our application to Kubernetes, right?
Yeah.
Is that
So
an advanced topic or it's a basic topic, sir?
so there are two approaches company might follow. Let me go back to the dashboard. Sometimes company do the CI process within some tools like GitHub or GitLab, and CD for CD they can use different tools. So Argo CD we use for the Kubernetes deployment for that.
Okay, sir.
But before that we need to follow the CI process. After that only it happens. Anyone has any other thoughts on this? Right, Sanoj or any other
I
one?
have one I have one questions on Jenkins and AWS services of CI/CD. Like, which are the best practices for CI/CD to use, like Jenkins in between Jenkins and AWS services, like code build, code deploy, code pipeline.
Yeah, that comes under the CI/CD pipeline. We will explain later the complete stages.
Mm-hmm.
uh, Basically, when we go for any CI/CD approaches, it depends on how many years you want to use your cloud. Let's say you assume like 20 years or 10 years you are not going for any other cloud provider. Basically you don't want to vendor lock something kind of a situation. So you can opt like AWS native tools for CI CD pipelines. But let's say you are not sure whether in after 10 years or 5 years might be you want to switch. So in that case we use some kind of tools that is not vendor lock. Let's say Jenkins, right? So Jenkins is suitable. It's open source. It's suitable for any cloud, like whether it is Azure or GCP or AWS, and GitHub Actions, right? So right now, I think GitHub Actions is more popular than Jenkins because Jenkins has a lots of uh, how I can say manually we need to configure and all the stuffs. So GitHub Actions
Yeah.
provide simpler way. Yeah, these things.
Yeah, basically, as Sanu said rightly, So lots of when you think about the enterprise organization, they don't want to do lots of manual work or unnecessary hectic to manage the baseline infrastructure. So that's what they more focus into the managed service basically. Let's say EC2 based MySQL approach or RDS based approach, right? So company definitely follow the RDS based approach because baselines hectic works we can definitely avoid, like managing the database backup or your administrator work, DB administrator work, right? For setting the replications, master slave architecture, high availability, right? So to avoid this kind of failures, we can definitely go with the managed base. So same thing like GitHub Actions, GitLab, CI/CD. These things provide very easy setup, and we can easily configure by configure setting in the YAML file, YAML file basically. So Jenkins has lots of definitely has its initially it was a solid tools norm people are using. Okay, but now the company are focusing more into the GitHub Action or GitLab CI/CD. You don't need to worry about the adding more and more agents there, like master slave architecture, user plugins management, and other configurations. Definitely, costing is available there, extra cost, but that gives more peace of mind basically. Okay, any other questions from anyone? Okay, yeah, so we are done with this like baseline for the Linux. You should have a Linux basic understanding how we can use the command line, user management, the checking the logs, some networking commands there. Okay, if you can explore on the Google or somewhere, you will definitely seen lots of documentation about that. I will definitely share the PDF or text file for the Linux, which tools you need to focus on that. Okay, then Git, then advanced like hosting providers. They in that you can use like GitHub or GitLab. Okay, these are the deployment features, GitHub Action and GitLab CI/CD. But apart from this, like issue tracking or project management, you can use this GitLab or GitHub. Okay, where you can just create the repos, multiple branches, and you can collaborate within your team, or you can share the codes like that. All the functionality you can work within that provider. Also, you can monitor your version as its feature, right? Version control system. So you can monitor all the commits there when you deploy, what changes. You can track all those information there. Apart from this, like once we have deployed this AWS, then by through the Terraform, right? Baseline OS, you can use Linux through the source code management and by using the tools CI/CD, right? So now what about the monitoring part, right? In that monitoring, company to company, its tool might be vary, but if you ask about the generic, like you can just read about the Grafana, right? Sometimes Prometheus, and in AWS, Cloud Native Service, CloudWatch, and CloudTrail as well. Okay, for the auditing point of view, compliance perspective. And apart from these, nowadays, company also started to use Loki and Open Telemetry. You might heard about on the, somewhere, right? Open Telemetry for the traces.
Yes.
When you are working with the multi-distributed system, so we need to figure it out the troubleshooting part, right? Which applications are consuming or the getting the bottleneck. So that's we need to use a trace ID there in the Open Telemetry, and we can use that. But for visualization, you can definitely use this Grafana. You can definitely learn. It's not a big things. You can learn easily on the documentation part. So that's all about we have mentioned here. You can definitely explore this. Okay. And apart from this, if any mention like Ansible, you can definitely learn. Initially, you can just focus on these tools which we discussed, but later on, if you have a time and this interested area, you can definitely learn this Ansible. Okay. And then instead of going to the VM based approach, you can just think about the containerization based approach. because mostly companies follow that way. Doesn't matter you have a React based application or you have a Java based application or something. So they are all almost deploy on the container base, not the EC2 based approach. There might be some organization where still are using EC2 based approach, but when we are working on the enterprise large scale industry, we will definitely not follow that strategy. Okay. And then some of the services like serverless technology in the AWS like Lambda function, API gateway, S3, DynamoDB, SQS, SNS, and apart from more than that service we are using, right? Monitoring part I mentioned here. In the security part, like in the CI/CD pipeline, as someone said, we need to use SonarQube, Tree for the Docker image scanning, Sneak, and other secret manager vault basically to handle the credentials, because we don't want to hard code any credentials or sensitive information in the code base. Okay, so that's should we need to follow standard practice. No developer or infrastructure guys should hard code at any access key, secret key, or any database credentials or any information which has very sensitive information. So we don't need to hard code it in the code base. For that, we can use this vault. So coming to the certification part, any questions from till now? Anyone? Or anyone want to share something based on your working experience about the tools?
Sir, I have one question. For
Mhm.
monitoring RDS MySQL instance, which AWS is best, like CloudWatch and CloudTrail in between?
CloudTrail has a different role. So it's
Okay.
basically tracking the API activity, which user login or and what action he has taken. Like
Actually, we will not get that, which means there is not any users. Actually, we connect on my like workbench from credentials,
mhm.
like URL that, yeah. But I would like to know that which queries we are firing and all. Which query we are running. Means if someone delete our data from database,
Mhm.
so how we know? Actually, I have created the logs for it, but actually I'm not getting logs from that.
So within a database, you want to track.
Yes, yes, yes. Actually, suppose we have
Maybe
created one database in database like MySQL.
okay. Maybe you can just enable the slow log there to track each changes. And apart from this, maybe you can just explore about this
Mm-hmm.
feature.
Yeah, there are the three or four types of logs, like slow query, error logs, general logs, we can say.
Yeah, definitely we can enable that as well, like general logs, audit logs, and error logs. And if
Mm-hmm.
you want to track on the major troubleshooting part, like which query taking how much time. So apart from
Mm-hmm.
that, for that you can enable the slow log query. Otherwise, it's not required because it's consuming
Mm-hmm.
some more resources. Because he, after enabling that slow log query, it will track each and everything, right? So it might consuming some more resources and performance
Mm-hmm.
might degrade for time. But for long period, you cannot use only for the during the troubleshooting point of view.
Okay, means I can try it like slow query logs. Means in that
Yeah, which query
idea
taking how much
stores.
time?
Mm-hmm. Okay, 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 okay. And so one question is there, like I'm not getting in logs in that actually in that, so I was confused in that. Like
The
there
user
is
activity,
not
na?
generating. Yes, then in slow query logs, I'm not
Slow query logs, you
like
can just
getting.
track about the how much query it's taking how much time. But
Mm-hmm.
about the user activity that you maybe need to look into. If anyone has
Mm-hmm.
knowledge on this, can share your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
I think basically we need to find the logs, like which who runs the which one query, right? So I think if
Mm.
you are an admin, then you can set up such kind of permissions, like, or you can just track the logs. I think so this is the better option. So just to find out how to view the logs, and then you can find out.
Mm. Maybe you need to play around on the any dev environment for these activities, where you can just configure some sort of auditing point of view, and you can just verify if it's working fine or not. If there are any impact because of that changes, you need to test it out on the lower environment basically about this question.
Yes, we
Okay.
can like as
Yeah.
means as I create some logs group in that in CloudWatch. So some logs
Mhm.
are generating, but slow query logs and like these logs are not generating yet. But I'll try like how we will do.
Sure, sure. Or in your friend circle, if someone has a DBA skill, so definitely you can just maybe discuss with them on the query level, more
Yeah, yeah,
expertise. Yeah.
yeah, sure, sure. Means I
So,
also
mhm.
means
Yeah, you want to say something?
yeah, like I have created database for my organization
Mhm.
and I'm working on it.
Okay, okay, sure. So next thing is basically is certification. Having certification is necessary for getting the jobs or career growth. Okay, it's depend on the situation. When you are exploring the job description or JD basically on the Naukri portal or any other hiring portal basically, where you can see if anyone specifically ask about the certification is mandatory skill, the candidates who is applying on the some particular job, that candidate should have a certification. So in that case, definitely yes, certification is required if they are asking, because sometimes what happen if any support based organization, they want to onboard some clients, right? Client or projects basically. So they want to show to their client we have a certified candidates. That's the reason some might you will say in the JD certification is mandatory, right? So that's one condition. Sometimes it happens like when you are already onboarding in the project, okay, in that case they might require the certification, having the certification. So in that case, instead of expensing from your packet to having the certification, you can ask for the organization, they have a definitely internal process where you can do the certification and you can just reimburse it. So in that case, you can just definitely use that benefit. You don't have to worry about that, the costing. So you need to just provide the certification, passing result to them, and the financial team will take care further. So definitely whatever the internal process you need to follow in that organization. And sometimes let's say you have 3 4 years of experience or some sort of like that, and you want to show some skills on that area. In that case also you can just do the certification. And if you have already good amount of experience on that and knowledge, and you can easily crack the interview, in that case you actually not require the certification if until and unless someone asks you, right? So you can definitely try to avoid unnecessary expense on that certification. If someone specifically asks in the during the job of applications or during the projects, in that case you can definitely do this certification. Or let's say you have a you are from the non-IT background or non-DevOps background, you want to show your skill, like you are the AWS engineer or certified वगैरह. So in that case also you can just do, if you are not getting opportunity on the right time, right? So in that case you can just add that batch in your pocket. So that will give some definitely some additional advantages. Just if you are thinking like as mentioned here, just if you just doing the certification and you are expecting like I will get definitely job, so that will not going to happen. Okay, you for as a base practice or base priority prerequisites basically, you should have a hands-on experience on that. Let's say you are, if you are, want to show the skill about the AWS for example or Kubernetes, so you should have a like a basic understanding about that, basic terminology, basic fundamental services. Okay, basic concepts, theoretical वगैरह. So then you can just definitely do the certification. If you're already working on the DevOps field or you want to do certification, so for AWS point of view, not not talking about the Azure or GCP. Okay, just you can just correlate about that. But for AWS side, like AWS certified associate, some people might use like uh, basic beginner level certification, right? What we call it as practitioner. That really not required. That is for basically like who the business analyst or your project manager or something, just showing the skill, like if they want to show the skill like we have a certified knowledge, matlab AWS knowledge, so in that case they can definitely go with that. But as we already working on that AWS services from last 1 or 2 years or more than that, so in that case you should avoid having the practitioner certification. You can definitely jump to the associate, and then if you are interested then you can just go with the professional or something. For developer as well, there are developer certified, AWS certified developer associate, and for the Kubernetes certified Kubernetes CKA, and there are multiple other certification as well for the Terraform and other stuff. But you don't have to do each certification there unnecessary. If some until and unless someone asks you. Okay. Anyone any thoughts on this certification part?
Yeah, I want to ask. I have one query regarding this. So, what if our certification is expired? Can we mention it in the resume, or what we can do else?
Not required to mention that that certification is expired, because that might be rare case someone going explicitly and just check your credentials. And if it's expired, it's not your fault, right? It's a, every certification has a limit like 2 years 3 years something like that. You already completed that
Yeah.
stage, right? So no required. If company asks like your certification is expired, you can demand it, right? I can do the certification if you required, I will recertify it, can you reimburse me for that, right? If they need certification, so you can just
Okay.
negotiate with that. But no, doesn't like not compulsory ki every years or expire you need to renew that certification.
Can we mention it in the resume?
What
Means, yeah, got it, got it. Okay, no problem.
no required.
Okay.
Okay, so how programming skills can help out in the DevOps basically? So definitely program having the programming skill will definitely help out. Where nowadays, if you think about the larger audience, so because every skill like writing the YAML file, your Terraform file, your CI/CD pipeline, or any bash scripting or any things, or sometimes in the real-time industry, we also follow. We sometimes we need to write down the Lambda function, right? So having the base, at least basic foundation of the programming skills, how the variables you can use, how to pass the value, how to take input from the some of the files or commands, and how we can pass to the another process, right? So those are the basic fundamental we should have at least knowledge about that. It might be you can learn about the Bash or Python or Node.js, TypeScript like that. That will definitely help out in the longer run, having the programming skills. Might be you can not expect like a very like core DevOps, sorry, not core developer, but at least basic level, like definitely we should have the language skill. So now it's currently the market demand basically. Even we also feeling in the organization. Definitely every DevOps should have at least basic programming skills. Now it's again depend on what programming language your project is using, right? Sometimes in the backend like Node.js or other Java वगैरह use होता है, right? They are using some in the front end. Front end we can just ignore that. It's a React base or something that front end developer will definitely help out. But whatever that comes into the infrastructure side, like any serverless automation, like we need to write down the Lambda function most of the cases. If you ask me, like you might be need to write down the Python Lambda function, right? So in that case, we need to have at least understanding. Okay, nowadays lots of AI tools are there. We can just ask the query uh, or the any functions and situation that will definitely gives us output. This script we can use, but we cannot blindly trust on that, and we cannot copy paste as it is in the production environment, right? So whatever the things written in that programming language or whatever the logic is behind that, so that we should have the knowledge to modification or something. Sometimes we normally call ना in the intro process और friend को भी हम बताते हैं कि प्रोग्रामिंग आती नहीं है बट क्या लिखा है वो हमें समझ में आता है, दैट थिंग्स एटलीस्ट वो
Yes,
लेवल
sir,
का थोड़ा तो
understandable.
एटलीस्ट अंडरस्टैंडिंग होना चाहिए.
Yes, sir. Sir,
Yeah.
as you have experience of many years, like, did you write the code from like in Python? Like, in which tools and services do you use, like Python and other programmings like Node.js?
Initially we write down the bash script for the database backup because in that case there was a EC2 based MySQL database, not the RDS. So we write down the bash script there. Definitely we took help from the internet. Okay. So everyone
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have a 100% skill. Even you have a core
Yes, yes.
DevOps or a developer, doesn't matter. So definitely everyone takes help from the other resources. Okay, offline and online.
Mm-hmm.
So we use MySQL backup for that, checking the dates every day, and incremental backups we take every day, and that backup should remove upload on the S3 bucket or somewhere other locations.
Mm-hmm.
That is the one situation. And in this last 6 to 7 years, so number of times we write down the Lambda function. It's to maximum time it's a Node.js base, okay, and sometimes it's a Python base. It's a
Mm-hmm.
mix of like for the real time project or normal POC like personal practice. So like
Means
starting the EC2 instance,
mhm.
stopping the
Means
instance.
most of the use like Python programming and not just programming use like in Lambda functions mostly,
Yeah,
right?
yes, yes.
And this,
Let me just delete. I just forgot last time basically. Let me delete this.
so I do have one questions. Like in MySQL RDS, I have created free tier database instance for now, but there is any need to take big instance for it. Like there is like we are storing hundreds of entries for 1 week or 2 week, you can say.
Sorry, what was the question?
Like as I'm right now using uh, free tier instance for production
Hmm,
level
hmm, hmm.
for one of the web application. Is there any need to increase the size of instance? And what about pricing? Like there is a
So
showing very much price.
okay, so that's blindly you cannot take the decision on that. You need to first analyze the use cases
Mm-hmm.
and the current utilization of that service. How much traffic
Mm-hmm.
and the application nature basically. It's application e-commerce kind of things like in the every sales event you are getting lots of traffic or something and it's really required. Then you can just track the last 6 month or 3 months utilization. If it's really required, you can just do increase the instance. But before that, you can definitely discuss about your database developer because there are two things. Like one is infrastructure level optimization, which you can increase the server capacity. But other things is like query based optimization, that we called it as indexes, right, in the database query. So that also need to optimize, and that developer will know, database developer. That's his job basically, to optimize the index
Okay.
query. And when you keep the big server like 32 GB or 64 GB RAM, that query is not index size. So that definitely your server is going to kill basically. He will consume your all the resources. So that's
Okay.
why query also optimize. Query, you need to optimize that query.
Yes.
Yeah. So these
Got
are
it.
the some Lambda function which I last time do the practice. Like you can see Python base, Node.js base. Mostly I prefer. Okay. So it's depend on like what task you are doing. Just this one I just write down for the stopping the RDS instance. It's simple one, right? So you can just write down this Lambda function for that like this. So all this information you want to write down here. Status log, your status code like 200 or 500, something like that. Connecting the database, then executing the command like for the stopping, starting like that, and some others as
Mm-hmm.
well. S3 bucket test, demo Lambda function, and this one is Python base for the demo.
Okay.
So these kind of codings you can do in the Lambda function for the Python base or your Node.js base. This is about the API gateway integration, where we called it as a get method and post method, and we just mention the status code 200 or 500 if any errors. So this way you can just write down the Lambda function code, or you can easily get these kind of things from the ChatGPT or any other AI tool as well. If you ask like create Node.js base Lambda function for let's say to store metadata from RDS to S3 bucket, right? So he will give all the steps basically here, and you can see the Lambda function sample code. And as I said, as they also mentioned, right, ChatGPT can make a mistakes. So we cannot blindly go and just copy paste this code. Okay, sometimes wherever the possible changes, we need to do that changes. But that changes कहाँ पे करना है, where we need to change, that skill we should have, right? So that's what programming, at least basic programming skill we should have, every DevOps engineers. Initially, definitely we will not get, but gradually we need to improve ourselves and we should learn something for this. And this will after comes practice and some theoretical knowledge, hands-on lab like that. Don't worry about the failures. It might be fail the Lambda function or something. So based on error message, you can just troubleshoot it and you can just debug it easily. Okay. So now coming to the Linux scope, we already discussed, right? So most of the time project, we use Linux over there as a baseline for you can say like any bash scripting or cron jobs configuration there, or your Docker baseline, or even you think about the ECS container or the other baseline, right? Most of the cases we use that. So definitely having the Linux skill is really helpful. Okay. Then some advanced topics on this, like understanding the need of CI/CD, as we discussed initially, right? So in the real time, no one allow you to create the, sorry, no one allow you to create the resources manually. Okay. So that's the reason we just need to follow the CI/CD pipeline structure there. I will definitely give the just overview here how we do. Let's say you are the DevOps engineer or developer. You are doing some code commit here by using IDE tool. IDE tool means what? You can use maybe VS Code, Visual Studio, or you can use Intel G something, okay, or any other tool. There are lots of IDE tool available in the market. So mostly people you might also seen somewhere like Visual Studio we use mostly, right? Even I am also using the Visual Studio, even in the project as well, and the local practice for that as well. Okay. So you can do your writing the code here basically it's you are working on the feature branch, right? And then you are doing the git add, git commit, and pushing the changes to the your remote repository, right? On the particular repository. So after that, your pipeline will trigger, right? In pipeline, we might have a different stages. Like it will maybe have first build, test. Just give me 1 minute. Then in the test, you can maybe your static code analysis, right? By integrating the Sonar Cube, right? In the Sonar Cube, we will get lots of lots of report there, code coverage, code smell, and other duplications, right? So based on the report, your developer will fix out whatever the issues are there. Okay, we don't have to worry about that. But configuration of the Sonar Cube in the CI/CD pipeline, that's our role. We need to configure that. Okay, and providing this Sonar Cube status, that's our job. And based on the code duplications, code coverage issue, that developer will take care, because in the report you will get all the details in the where is duplicates happening in the particular file. Okay, that's completely for code formatting basically. Developer will understand that easily, how they need to write down the clean code. Okay, instead of writing the garbage code or something like that, they will know better. Then once that's all the process completed, SonarQube वगैरह, right? Finally, if it's a ECS based approach like container वगैरह, then your Docker image will scan here by using Trivy or any other tool. Okay. Then once that is completed, then your image will push on the ECR or Docker Hub, whatever you are using. Sometimes people can use JFrog. Anyone heard about this? JFrog, Nexus वगैरह.
Yes.
Okay. So
Artifactory.
or ECR in the AWS itself, right? That authentication we will need to configure in this pipeline. And finally, once that is done, then your code will deploy on the dev environment. This is comes under your CI process. And after this, whatever happening like dev, test environment, and production, that comes under the CD process. CD means you have the deployment basically. Okay. So why we need CI/CD pipeline? Why we cannot jump directly to the manual process or any other? Okay. When we think about the real-time deployment or production environment, right? We don't want to put unnecessary garbage things or vulnerable code into the live system, right? So this is your live system. No one want their system should be a buggy or uh, vulnerability having all the systems and other issues, right? Code coverage issue or not having the standard codes available on the live system. Okay, that will definitely have the business impact and other slowness or other, there might be maximum chances to have the hacking or something compromise, basically system compromise. Okay, they might lose the lots of business there. So for that, to avoid this kind of situation, we need to follow this all the certain process, writing the proper code, right? Then before merging to the any other upper environment, we need to follow the code review process, right? It's called as a MR merge request or PR pull request. Okay, we need to raise that and we need to get it approved or reviewed by the your tech architect or your team lead, basically your tech manager, whoever available in your team. Once all these guys satisfied, he will approve your request, merge request basically. Then only you will able to merge your changes into the main branch. Otherwise, it's not possible. Okay. So all these configurations, if you have a maintainer access for particular repo, you can configure this all the repo rule set for this. And that is a good practice. We need to set up branch level strategies on the every project. Let's say you are managing some track for the let's say any applications. For that you have a repo, right? So we know as a DevOps engineer The main branch is like your this one, right? Main, or we call it as a master branch, right? So this we need to make a protection. Like if I show you here, let's say this branch, right? So if I go to the settings, but for that you need to have the maintainer access. Otherwise, if you have a developer access, you cannot do see these settings. Okay, and you can see under the settings rule set. So inside the rule set, as of now I have not created, but if I create here uh, new branch here, basically new repo, not branch, demo repo basically. Okay, public real time, it will be it's private, not the public one. Okay, but for now I'm just keeping the public one, and add the readme file and create it. So this is the repo, right? Demo insert settings. You can see here rules, rule sets. So as of now it's no rule set configured. You can create like new tag rule set, new branch rule set. Okay, add the name like demo rule, for example. Enforce statement active, and here target, which one you want to make the protection. So definitely as a standard practice, we should have our main branch should be protected. Okay, it might be your main branch or master branch, but that is called as a your top level, which is your include the default branch, and our default branch is main branch. Okay, now under this you can just whatever the rule set you want to apply, you can just check box right here. Require deployment to succeed, choose which environment must be succeed, like this. Require sign comments, require a pull request before merging. Okay, so this is basically if you want to merge your code, if you want to merge your code from feature branch to master branch. Okay, if you don't configure this kind of rule set, right? So anyone can easily raise the merge request, and he can easily merge his changes into the main branch or master branch. That's not a good practice. Okay, so that is the reason we need to put the rule sets there, so no one can directly raise their MR, and without having the approvals he can directly merge in his changes to main branch. Okay, because there might be a bugs, there might be a issues, right? Compliance issue, or might be any credentials he might add. So that's the reason we need to have a in between code review process, and every industry follow this code review process. You might also have this experience, right? So for that we require this at least one require approval. So without this condition he cannot merge his changes into the main branch. So these kinds of rule set we can just configure here, and one more checks we need to apply here. This one as well. So no one can merge his changes, not merge, no one can push his changes into the main branch directly. Okay, it's not a good practice in the industry where so normally in the real time we have this main branch, right? When we are working in for any task, it might be infrastructure task or it might be application level task. So first we have to create the feature branch out of master branch or main branch. Okay, then whatever the changes we want to do, we need to do here, not directly on the main branch. Okay, so we can just do whatever the changes in the main feature branch, then we can follow the code review process, MR request, and after approved we can merge our changes into the main branch. Okay, that's a good practice in the industry. So that is the reason to avoid, so no one can directly push his changes into the main branch. We need to configure these kind of rule sets. You can also do practice or by enabling this rule set, and you can just try. So it will not allow to push directly changes into the main branch. You have to raise the PR there, pull request. Okay. Okay, these are all of things basically which we discuss now. And for the build and deployment, you can use, we already discussed about this, right? GitLab, CI/CD, GitHub Actions, Jenkins, like that. And this one also we already discussed, manual versus infrastructure as a code management. Okay, so manually we cannot think about that because no one allowed. If it's a very small scale industry where these DevOps culture will not follow, so in that case, definitely yes, you can just create the resources manually because they have very less amount of servers, one or two, or maximum five servers or something like that. In that case, you can manage. But when you are working on the mid or larger scale industry, so in that case, you need to follow that proper standards for that. For the monitoring, you can use, as we discussed, like Grafana visualization tool and other Prometheus, ELK. People sometimes also use PLK and other Dynatrace, Datadog, like that. So that's advanced topic there, but that's all falls under this monitoring and observability. Okay. For alerting, there are multiple situations, SLA, SLO, SLI, lots of things are there. So based on that, definitely sometimes people configure the pager duty. So based on last industry experience, so you might have your different thoughts on this, but what I observe there, the people configure the on calls basically. So definitely when we are working in the 9 to 5 business hours, basically, we will definitely get alerts into our Slack channel integration. So if I draw here, so there are multiple approaches where you can just follow. If you have a different experience, definitely you can just share your thought and experience on that. But normally, let's say you have this infrastructure, right? Lots of resources you have created, AC2 container or Lambda function, RDS, like that. And on the top of that, you have configured the alert. Alert for that, you might use CloudWatch with SNS, right? SNS topics. And into the SNS, you can configure as a target is a email. This is one approach. Okay. But when you have a larger audience, let's say as a good practice. So in the SNS topic, you should not add the email address. Okay. Let's say some employee leaving the organization, some new joining the organization, right? So that's really become the hectic work for you to remember each email ID, then removing from that. So instead of that, you can configure or integrate Slack channel, right? So you might definitely aware about this. So instead of that, you can just create in the Slack, you can create one group and you can add your respective folks into this group. Okay. And in the Slacks, there is a feature. I don't have now access to this any one of the Slacks, but if you are already working on the Slacks, in the go to the settings, you will see that email, one of the randomly generated email address in every group. Okay. So in that, you can just copy that email address. It's a group email address, basically, not individual email address. And inside the SNS topic, you can add as a subscriber as an email address. So that will trigger the alerts directly to your Slack channel group, not the individual user. So that how we follow there. Okay. Sometimes some company might follow like instead of slacking, if they are using Microsoft Teams, they might redirect their CloudWatch alerts to this MS Teams, or might be other approaches like Skype for business or maybe other things. And apart from this, people might configure the pager duty. So based on last experience, there is, let's say you got one alert. It might be your Slack channel alert or Teams alert. If you not acknowledge second times, that alert will trigger on your mobile phone. Okay. And still you didn't acknowledge, third call will raise to your manager basically. So this is how we work there as on call support. So apart from the business hours, there is a rotational based on call support. It's not necessary you should get opportunity. It's depend on which kind of project you are working. But let's say 9 to 5 jobs you have done, right? 9 a.m. morning and 5 p.m. After that, who will handle the alerts if something goes wrong with the production system, right? For that, there is a concept like on-call support. So definitely for that, you will get additional compensation, what we can say, जो भी amount वगैरह होता है, they will definitely give you for that. But let's say 1 week on-call support. So every month we will get like this, once in a month, 1 week basically, we need to handle this alerts वगैरह अगर कुछ आता है तो. So this totally depend on the company and project to project, how they handle the things. Okay, so that is all about from my side for today's session. Anyone has any thoughts, any doubts, something, or want to share any experience? So it will help for the others.